everybody, welcome to the Comic Game Movie Show. My name is Deshaun, and today I'm here to give you a top 6, actually. You see, with all the rumors surrounding both Daredevil, Charlie Cox's Daredevil, and Vincent D'Onofrio coming back to reprise the role as Kingpin, with various rumors of maybe even having Jessica Jones return, I feel like that this is a good opportunity to really look back at the Marvel Netflix shows. These shows at the time were not actually, like, these shows were made to be in the MCU, technically. But it became abundantly clear that the rift between Marvel Entertainment, not Marvel Entertainment, Marvel Studios and Marvel TV was becoming, was shifting. I've talked about this many times before, the whole Ike Perlmutter and Jeff Loeb. The whole Jeff Loeb thing and Ike Perlmutter, the whole thing with them was just insane. While Jeff Loeb did do some pretty good work down there, and also he made some pretty decent comics, there's a lot of stuff that's out there about his handling of certain things. Like, a lot of stuff out there about it. And, at the end of the day, Jeff Loeb did more problems than not. I mean, he's the guy who hired, I think his name's Scott Buck. He's the guy who got Scott Buck to direct Iron Fist, and then to come back and let him direct the Inhumans. Underneath Jeff Loeb, so much shit went wrong. But there was a rift growing because Jeff Loeb was Ike Perlmutter's boy. So, in the end, since Jeff Loeb was one of Ike Perlmutter's boys, when Feige split, he cut a lot of ties with Marvel Television because Jeff Loeb ran Marvel Television. But, we know how things turned out. Now Feige runs the whole show, and he doesn't have to worry about that at all. But that's why those shows ended up not being as connected as they were initially conceived to be. You gotta understand, when they were making the Netflix shows, Disney Plus wasn't really even an idea. Because you can't imagine that if they were planning on making Disney Plus, Disney Plus was something that they were that was off. You know what I mean? But once, because they wouldn't have made these shows if they knew that Disney Plus was coming around the corner. They wouldn't have made these shows. They wouldn't have put these shows like Daredevil and Punisher and Luke Cage on fucking Disney Plus, but they just wouldn't have made them at all. So this was a different time period when these shows came out. These shows started coming out around 2014, starting with Daredevil, it was a different time period. These shows were all gritty. They were all trying to be street level, trying to go for a different demographic, a more adult demographic. They kind of wanted to pare down. They kind of wanted to pare down the superhero aspects and make it more about characters and more about specific things. They all made a lot of mistakes, including having 13 episodes, because I believe most people will agree that most, if not all, of these shows were too long. But I'm here to talk about I am going to rank them. I'm going to rank them from the worst to the best of the shows. Now, you guys probably already know what's the worst and what's the best, but the middle might confuse you. But starting off at number 6, the number 6 show, Netflix show, it has to be Iron Fist. Iron Fist, to me, was the biggest disappointment. It's one of the biggest disappointing things that Marvel, the actual entity of Marvel itself as a whole, has ever produced. Because I was excited for Iron Fist. I was, because in my mind, because you had seen Jessica Jones, you had seen Luke Cage, and in my mind I was like, well, Iron Fist is going to be this over-the-top badass action, especially if you had just watched Daredevil that had great choreography and great action sequences. You just imagine they're going to just step it up 15 notches for Iron Fist, and it was the exact opposite. Finn Jones was his version of Danny Rand was not very well done. Although I didn't hate him like everyone else did, it wasn't that compelling at all. Not only did Finn Jones not have time to prepare, he wasn't committed to training to get better at it, so it ended up hurting the product as a whole. It had the weakest story. It had the weakest villains. Because the Iron Fist character is so magical, and the thing about the Iron Fist character is the Iron Fist character is more on line with Shang-Chi. And just like Shang-Chi, the Iron Fist character needs a certain level of special effects, because it's not just the Kung Fu character. There's a certain level of special effects to this character. There's a certain level of mysticism. I mean, this is a man who beats a dragon to death and sinks his fist into his heart. You know, you have to be able to believe that and see that and believe that he could do that. And you never do. And that show, it ended up being one of the worst shows that, you know, the worst shows on Netflix. It ended up being the black spot on there, really. A massive black spot. Coming in at number 5, I have to say, although there are things I absolutely love about the show, in the end, upon rewatching and rethinking, it's not actually all that great. It's okay. It's okay with great performances, and that is the Punisher. I love Jon Bernthal as the Punisher. I do. I love him as the Punisher. He nails that character. But when you go back and look at those shows, they're too long. There's a lot of stuff not happening. There's not a ton of action for 13 episodes. And if it wasn't 13 episodes, and the thing about it is, that's what the 13 episodes. The 13 episodes hurt no show worse than it did The Punisher. It was just too long. It should have been short. It should have been like 6 episodes max. It should have been like a Disney Plus show. It should have been like 6 episodes max. It should have been 6 episodes, an hour, you know, bing, bang, boom. Consolidate the budget to get some action set pieces, because while some of the action, because while there are awesome action in that first season, it's long and in between. A lot of the characters don't land. What they did with Jigsaw was pretty shit. Like Jigsaw's the Punisher's most recognizable villain, and they didn't even go all the way with messing up his face. They have some really good stuff with PTSD and stuff about soldiers and whatnot. And you know, but it really doesn't get too much into it, and it's really just like a side story. It's really just a side thing that comes and it goes. And then the second season is worse than the first season, because while there are some, once again, cool action sequences in it, there's a lot of just stuff not happening. There's a lot of just like, what's the word I'm looking for? Just spinning of wheels and nothing really going down and at all, and like subplots with a kid and whatnot. Like I said, looking back at The Punisher, as much as I enjoy Jon Bernthal, The Punisher to me is like the Iron Man 2. Because I love Robert Downey Jr., and I've often said on my channel that I love Iron Man 2. I mean, I love Iron Man 2, but I still enjoy Iron Man 2 just for Robert Downey Jr. alone, because he's the main character. I'm following him. It's still fun because he's still fun. But, you know, it's clearly not good. You know, well, not good. It's clearly not as good as it could be or anywhere near this. While I think that The Punisher, Netflix Punisher had a bunch of great moments, a bunch of great scenes. As a whole show, it really was a drag. It does drag. It does drag a lot, and you know, it really affected me. It really did. So that means that at number 4, I would have to put Defenders, the one season of Defenders. And while Defenders also had the same problems, first of all, it wasn't as long. I don't believe it was as long. I don't think Defenders was 13 episodes. I think it was like 10 or something like that. It was like 10 or 9, something like that. So it wasn't as long. And the novelty of seeing these characters come together and bounce off of each other was really cool. They really captured that. You really got the feeling of that. They really captured that. It was just really cool seeing these characters interact with one another. They really captured that. It was almost like going through an Avengers moment all over again and seeing these characters come from different places and different backgrounds and then bounce off each other and how they affect each other. It's everything you love about team-ups in the first place. So that was cool. The Elektra stuff was kind of cool too. The fight scene, there were some awesome fight sequences, some awesome banter, some fun stuff. The actual story itself that they wanted to do was cool. The execution of that story was not. The hand ended up being, like, they ended up completely doing, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, just awful damage to the hand and making them so weak. They hired Sigourney Weaver as the villain, and she was weak. She didn't even really get to do anything. Not really. Like, you hear a lot about her, and it's cool that she's here, but you don't really get to do anything, see anything with her. The hand was completely underwhelming. All of these villains coming back and just dying. It's one of those things where that's like, honestly, Defenders is when the writing was on the wall, when it was like, dude, they don't have the budget to do what they want to do. The ambitions of what they want to do and the budget just ain't mixing. And it was so disappointing. And while The Defenders was disappointing, I still had a good time watching it. I still had a good time with it. Which leads me to number 3, Luke Cage. I love Luke Cage Season 2. Love Luke Cage Season 2. Absolutely love Luke Cage Season 2. Actually, you know what? I'm flipping it. I'm flipping it because I'm thinking about it and I'm flipping it. Jessica Jones will be my number 3. Jessica Jones, to me, Season 1, I loved it. Season 1, the villain, Kilgrave, it was fantastic. I know some people have their problems. I thought Season 1 was absolutely fantastic. Season 2 was a drag. It had its moments, but it was a drag. It had its moments, but it was a complete drag. It was a complete slog, and you know, and it was just, and in the end, I felt like, okay, this is just, I don't know how I feel about it. By the time I got to the end of Jessica Jones Season 2, I was like, I'm not sure if I'm excited for Season 3. Now, Season 3 was a return to form in a way. It wasn't as good as Season 1 because they don't have Kilgrave, and I don't think, and that's what hurt the show. What hurt this show is that Kilgrave was such a great villain. David Tennant did such a fantastic job with that villain that once he was gone, they never found anything to replace him that was worthwhile. And so it just kind of, and since they couldn't find anything to replace him, they were just kind of like, just trying to focus on other things, but it just never worked. It never worked. They never found a compelling enough villain to replace him, and that just hurt the rest of the shows. But Season 3 was a return to form in terms of actually being a good story and whatnot, and, you know, because Season 1 was kind of all over, 2 was kind of all over the place. But Jessica Jones is great. Christian Ritter did a great job as Jessica Jones. I loved her. I loved her demeanor. I love the way she acted. I love the way she delivered all her lines. I love her and Luke Cage's chemistry. First time I ever saw 2 superheroes having sex on the big screen. That was a treat. Love seeing interracial stuff. You know me. I love that shit. So that was always cool too. And on top of that, Christian Ritter always struck me. She's a beautiful woman, but I don't know how to say this without sounding like an asshole. She doesn't have the typical heroine look. If that makes any sense. She's not this blonde-haired, like model. You know what I mean? Like she's approachably beautiful. And I thought that just made her more realistic to me. It made her feel more genuine to me for some reason. I don't want to be an asshole, but it did. It made her feel more genuine to me that I could actually pass her on the street. And I dug it. Dug Jessica Jones. Dug Jessica Jones. Thought Season 1 was awesome. Thought Season 2 was meh. And I thought Season 1 was good. Luke Cage is my number 2. I loved half of Luke Cage. Fucking Cottonmouth and all that stuff at the beginning of Luke Cage Season 1 was fantastic. Tail end of Season 1 got a little weird. But Coulter is fantastic as Luke Cage. He's exactly how I imagine Luke Cage behaving and being. I love the environment. I love how they did his indestructible skin. That effect was always so good to see, and like the way they went about it. They did a great job with that. A great job with his origin and whatnot. So that was all on point. That was all on point. You know, problem with Luke Cage is that the Season 2 second half of Season 1 was meh. Like, there are parts of it that are cool, but all that stuff with Diamondback, and it was a little bit much. It was a lot much. And it ended up becoming just real corny and cheesy real fast. But Season 2, in my opinion, was fantastic. I enjoyed the hell out of Season 2. They corrected everything from Season 1. They got everything correct. It was great. Dug it. Dug Bushmaster. Bushmaster was an awesome, relatable villain. Mariah was just this hateful. You just hated her, but you understood where she was coming from. That show was dope. But you know what's going to be number 1, and it is Daredevil. Daredevil was fantastic. Though I do think Season 2 isn't as good as 1 and 3, Season 2 is still good. You know what I mean? It's still solidly good. Though there are aspects of it that don't work out. But Season 1 is fantastic. Charlie Cox is great as Daredevil. You love the chemistry between him and Foggy Nelson and all these different characters that he interacts with. And like, there's just so many characters he interacts with throughout the course of that first season. And Vincent D'Onofrio is a fantastic villain. Just a great villain. And just overall, it was just fun to see him. Season 2 went a little bit more comic booky in terms of having the Punisher, having the hand, like the hand involved, having the Punisher, having, like, you know, they were doing a lot more stuff, and it got a bit sloppy at times. It did. Season 2 did get a bit did get a bit over the place, but it was still fun. It was still executed well. Elektra, I mean, all of that was so cool. It was cool seeing Elektra. I love this interpretation of Elektra. The interpretation of Elektra was awesome, and you know, the interpretation of Punisher was great. While the story itself might not have always worked completely, Season 2 was still good. And Season 3 was a return to Season 1. It was on par, if not better. We introduced Bullseye. The Kingpin is more Kingpin than ever before. Daredevil has been knocked down a peg, so now he's coming up from the bottom again. Season 3 was fantastic. So that is my rankings of the Netflix shows. What are your rankings? 6 to 1. Comment below. Let me know. And thank you guys for joining the Come Get Movie Show. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Goodbye.